The evening sun dipped low over the dusty town of Willow Creek, casting long shadows across the wooden platform of the depot. As the last stagecoach pulled away, wheels creaking and horses snorting from the strain of the long journey, folks milled about, gathering their parcels, greeting loved ones and going on their way. But one figure stood apart, a young woman dressed in a travel-worn dress, her face pale, her steps uncertain, her hands trembling as she clutched a worn satchel to her chest. She had come to this town with nothing but desperation in her heart, hope buried deep beneath exhaustion, and her body could no longer carry the weight of all she had endured. Before anyone could stop her, her knees buckled, her breath caught in her throat, and she collapsed onto the wooden boards of the depot floor with a faint cry that barely reached the air. A murmur rose among the people, but few moved to help, some whispering, some turning away as though her weakness were an inconvenience to their busy lives. Yet among the onlookers was a man whose heart stirred at the sight, a tall cowboy with a weathered hat pulled low over sharp eyes, a man who carried himself with quiet strength and unshaken purpose. His boots struck the boards with steady confidence as he strode forward, kneeling beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her pale face. "Easy now," he murmured, his voice deep and steady, the kind of voice that could calm horses and silence storms. She tried to whisper something, but no sound came, only the faint tremor of lips too parched to form words. Without hesitation, he slipped his arms beneath her slight frame, lifting her as though she weighed no more than a feather, cradling her against his chest with a protective tenderness that turned the heads of every bystander. Her head fell against his shoulder, her breathing shallow, her body limp, and he felt the fragile rhythm of life fluttering weakly in her. The crowd parted as he carried her, his stride unbroken, his gaze fixed ahead as though the only thing that mattered in this world was getting her to safety. Whispers followed him. "Who is she? Why's he bothering with her? She don't look like she belongs here." But he paid them no mind, his focus unwavering. He passed the saloon, where laughter and music spilled out into the street, the general store where shutters were being drawn for the night, the sheriff's office where two deputies leaned against the doorframe watching silently, and he carried her toward the edge of town where his small cabin stood under the shelter of old cottonwoods. By the time he reached his porch, the evening sky had burned to deep orange, the horizon alive with fading fire, and he laid her gently on his bed inside, his heart thudding with an urgency he had not felt in years. He fetched water, dampened a cloth, and pressed it to her lips, coaxing her to drink. Slowly her lashes fluttered, her eyes opening to reveal a softness filled with both fear and gratitude. And she whispered hoarsely, Why would you help me?" He pulled a chair beside her, removing his hat and setting it aside, his rugged face shadowed by the flickering lamplight. "Because no one deserves to fall and be left behind," he said simply, his voice carrying the weight of truth. She stared at him, her eyes glistening, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she let herself believe in the kindness of another soul. He asked her name and she told him, her voice weak but steady, and little by little the story of her hardship spilled out, the journey from far away, the family she lost, the cruel misfortunes that had left her with nowhere to turn. He listened without interruption, his jaw tightening with each injustice she revealed, but his hand remained steady as he poured her another cup of water, offering her bread and broth he had set to warm by the fire. In that quiet cabin, beneath the sound of crickets chirping outside, something unspoken passed between them, an understanding, a promise, a bond born not of chance, but of destiny. She found herself drifting into sleep, comforted not just by food and warmth, but by the strength of the man who had lifted her when the world would have left her to fall. He sat beside her long after her breathing steadied, his gaze resting on her with a mixture of protectiveness and a stirring he had not allowed himself to feel for years. Outside, the town went on as it always did, filled with its noise and gossip. But in that cabin, something rare had taken root. A woman broken by hardship had been given a chance to rise again, and a cowboy who had long lived in solitude discovered the stirring of purpose greater than his own survival. By the time dawn broke, spilling pale light through the cabin window, the cowboy knew one truth that settled deep into his heart. He had carried her home not just to save her life, but to remind himself that even in the harshest of lands, kindness and courage could spark hope. And so the story of that night would linger, not in the whispers of townsfolk, but in the bond that had begun in the silence between two weary souls. And as you listen to this tale of grit, compassion, and the power of a single act of courage, remember this: our channel is here to bring you more stories of the Wild West, where love, honor, and bravery shine in the dust of hardship. If this story touched your heart, make sure to hit that subscribe button, share it with others who need a spark of hope, and join us for the next tale. Because every story we tell carries a piece of the frontier spirit, and you won't want to miss what comes next.